After 60, most of us are told to slow down, take it easy, avoid strain. Meanwhile, in rural Japan, people in their 70s and 80s move through their days with a fluidity and strength that would exhaust someone half their age. They're not running marathons or lifting heavy weights. They're doing something far simpler, movements so subtle you'd walk past them without a second glance. Yet these 5 practices, passed down quietly through generations, are reshaping how researchers understand mobility, balance, and even cognitive decline in later life. What's fascinating is that 4 of them take less than 3 minutes each, and the 5th, the one that consistently surprises Western physiologists, requires nothing more than a doorway and 60 seconds of your morning. Before we get to that one, and trust me, you'll want to hear this because it targets the exact reflex that predicts fall risk better than any other measure, let me set the stage with something that might make you rethink everything you've been told about aging and movement. In Okinawa, Nagano, and pockets of rural Kyushu, falls among people over 70 happen at less than half the rate seen in similar populations across North America and Europe. Hip fractures, the injury that so often marks the beginning of a sharp decline, are dramatically lower. It's not genetics. These benefits show up in first-generation immigrants who maintain traditional practices. It's not diet alone, though that plays a role. When researchers dug into daily routines, they kept circling back to a handful of movements, small ritualized actions woven into morning and evening rhythms, that create a kind of movement literacy most of us lose by our 50s. These aren't exercises in the way you think of them. No one is counting reps or setting timers. They're patterns that reawaken something your nervous system still remembers, but has quietly let go. Here's what they don't tell you in most senior fitness programs. The standard advice, chair yoga, water aerobics, resistance bands, is built around the assumption that older bodies need gentler, slower, safer versions of what younger people do. But the Japanese approach flips that. These movements aren't modifications. They're not scaled down or cushioned. They're precision practices that demand more from your balance system, your proprioception, your ability to sense where your body is in space, than almost anything you'd find in a typical gym class. And that's exactly why they work. Your nervous system doesn't decline because it's old. It declines because we stop asking it to do hard things. The second movement on this list, and I'm going to come back to it in a moment, involves a way of getting up from the floor that most physical therapists would tell you to avoid. It looks awkward, maybe even risky, but in clinical assessments it correlates with lower all-cause mortality more strongly than almost any other single movement test. People who can do it well into their 70s and 80s have cardiovascular and musculoskeletal profiles that resemble those of people 20 years younger. We'll break down exactly how to build toward it safely because you're not going to nail it on day one, and that's fine. But first, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now with your age and where you're watching from. I'm curious how global this community is and whether any of you already practice movements like these without realizing it. Let's start with the 5th movement, the one that sets the foundation for everything else. It's called Tenrin, a term that translates roughly to forging or tempering the way a blacksmith works metal. In practice, it's a standing exercise done first thing in the morning, often while water is heating for tea, that resets your postural reflexes and switches on the deep stabilizers that keep you upright all day. You stand with feet shoulder-width apart, weight evenly distributed, and you perform a slow, controlled squat, but only to the point where your thighs are roughly parallel to the ground. You hold that position for 3 full breaths. Deep inhales through the nose, slow exhales through the mouth, then you rise in one smooth motion, pressing through your heels, keeping your chest lifted. The whole cycle takes about 45 seconds. You do it twice. That's it. Why does this matter? Most people over 60 have what's called gluteal amnesia. Your glutes, the large muscles in your backside, stop firing correctly because you've spent decades sitting. When they don't work, your lower back and knees take over, which leads to pain and instability. This squat pattern, done slowly with attention to breath, rewires that chain. The hold at the bottom forces your glutes and deep hip stabilizers to engage. The breath work keeps you from bracing through your shoulders and neck, which is what most people do when they feel unstable. Within 2 weeks of daily practice, your gait changes. You'll notice it going upstairs or stepping off a curb. Your hips will feel more centered, less like they're hitching or compensating. I worked with a man named Robert, 72, a retired electrician from Ontario who'd had chronic lower back pain for a decade. He'd tried physical therapy, injections, even considered surgery. His movement pattern was all knees and spine. His hips barely moved. I showed him Tanrin and told him to do it every morning while his coffee brewed. He didn't believe 2 squats would do anything, but he was disciplined, did it anyway. 3 weeks later, he called to say his back pain had dropped by half. 6 weeks in, it was gone. What changed wasn't his back. His glutes started working again, and everything else fell into line. Here's how you adapt this if you're starting from scratch. Use a countertop or sturdy chair back. For light support, just fingertip contact, not leaning. Lower only as far as you can while keeping your heels flat and your chest up. If that's a quarter squat, fine. Hold for 1 breath instead of 3. Do 1 cycle instead of 2. Every 3 days, try to go a little lower or hold a little longer. Your body will tell you when it's ready. The key is the daily rhythm. Same time, same place, same cue. That repetition is what rebuilds the reflex. Here's the kicker. This movement also serves as a daily test. If one morning you notice your balance feels off or you can't go as low as yesterday, that's information. It might mean you're dehydrated, you didn't sleep well, or something else is brewing. Japanese elders use it as a check-in with their body, a way of listening before the day demands anything. Now let's move to number 4, a practice called Ashubi Sukamu, which means gripping with the toes. You've probably never thought about your toes as something you train, but in traditional Japanese homes where people walk barefoot or in soft socks on tatami mats, toe strength is part of daily life. This exercise makes it explicit. You sit on the edge of a chair or low bench, feet flat on the floor, and you place a small towel on the ground in front of you. Using only your toes, no assistance from your heels or the ball of your foot, you grip the towel and scrunch it toward you. You repeat this until you've pulled the entire towel under your feet. Then you spread it back out and do it again. The whole process takes about 2 minutes. Why does this matter? Your toes are the first point of contact with the ground when you walk. They provide the final push-off with each step, and they're loaded with sensory receptors that feed information to your balance system. When those muscles weaken, which they do in almost everyone who wears rigid supportive shoes for decades, your gait becomes flat and heavy. You lose that spring. More importantly, you lose feedback. Your brain gets less information about the surface you're walking on, which makes you more likely to trip or misstep on uneven ground. Strengthening your toes rebuilds that sensory loop. Research from biomechanics labs in Tokyo has shown that toe grip strength correlates strongly with walking speed and balance confidence in older adults. In some analyses, people with stronger toes were 30% less likely to report a fall over a 2-year period compared to those with weak toe flexors. It's not a small thing. It's foundational. I met a woman named Diane, 67, who loved hiking but had stopped because she felt unsteady on trails. Rocks, roots, anything uneven made her anxious. She'd already strengthened her legs with resistance training, but it hadn't helped her confidence. I gave her the towel exercise and told her to do it every evening while watching television. She thought it was silly, said it felt like nothing, but after about 10 days, she noticed her feet felt more alive, her word. A month later, she was back on trails. She said it was like her feet could read the ground again. Here's the protocol. Use a small hand towel or dishcloth, something with a little texture. Sit with your knees bent at 90 degrees, feet flat. Start with bare feet always. Grip and pull 5 times with each foot. If that feels easy, use a thicker towel or add a light weight on the far end. If you have neuropathy or reduced sensation in your feet, this exercise is even more important, but go slow and use visual feedback. Watch what your toes are doing because you might not feel it clearly at first. Pair this with the morning Tanrin, and you've just addressed 2 of the 3 most common movement deficits in people over 60. The third one is next. Number 3 is called katate no baransu, one-hand balance, and it's deceptively simple. You stand next to a wall or counter, close enough to touch it if needed but not holding on, and you lift one foot off the ground, bending your knee so your thigh is roughly parallel to the floor. You hold that position for 30 seconds, then switch sides. That's the baseline. Once you can do 30 seconds cleanly, you start adding challenges. Close your eyes. Turn your head side to side slowly while balancing. Reach your free hand toward the ceiling or down toward the ground. Each variation removes a layer of sensory support and forces your balance system to adapt. Why does this matter? Balance is not a single skill. It's a conversation between your eyes, your inner ear, and the sensors in your muscles and joints. In younger people, all three systems are strong, so if one falters, the others compensate. But after 60, the inner ear starts to lose cells, vision can decline, and proprioception weakens. If you don't train balance explicitly, that conversation breaks down. The result is you start to feel shaky, you move more cautiously, and ironically, that caution makes you weaker. You stop trusting your body, so it stops being trustworthy. Single-leg balance is the most researched predictor of fall risk there is. In studies from gerontology centers, people over 60 who cannot hold a single-leg stand for at least 10 seconds have more than double the risk of a serious fall in the next 3 years. It's a clearer signal than muscle strength, bone density, or even previous fall history. And here's the good news. It's trainable. You can go from wobbly to solid in 4 to 6 weeks of daily practice. I worked with a man named Gene, 76, a former postal worker who'd had a minor stroke 2 years earlier. His walking was fine, but he had no confidence in his balance. He avoided crowds, wouldn't use escalators, held railings everywhere. I started him on one-hand balance, just 10 seconds per side, eyes open, touching the wall lightly. Every few days we added 2 seconds or removed a bit of support. Within a month he was doing 25 seconds per side, no wall. 2 months in he did it with eyes closed. He told me he felt like he'd gotten a part of himself back that he thought was gone for good. His walking didn't change much measurably, but his willingness to move through the world did. Here's the progression. Week 1, eyes open, light finger contact with a wall, 10 seconds per side, twice a day. Week 2, same but no wall contact, just proximity. Week 3, aim for 20 seconds. Week 4, add slow head turns while balancing. Week 5, close your eyes for 5 seconds in the middle of the hold. Week 6, try reaching or bending while balanced. If you feel unstable, regress 1 step. There's no rush. The goal is to make your nervous system feel safe while also challenging it, and that's a narrow window you have to find through repetition. One thing to watch for. If you notice one side is significantly weaker, that's common. Spend a little extra time on that leg. Asymmetry is often a sign of old compensation patterns, maybe from an injury or joint issue on the other side. Balancing it out reduces strain everywhere. Now we get to number 2, the one I mentioned at the top, the movement that surprises people the most. It's called Shizen no Tachi Agari, which means natural rising, and it's a method for getting up from the floor without using your hands. You start seated on the ground, legs crossed or tucked to one side. You shift your weight onto one foot, press down through that heel, and stand up in one smooth motion, arms reaching forward for balance but not touching anything. Then you reverse it, lowering yourself back down with control. Still no hands. Why does this matter? There's a test used in medical research called the sitting rising test, developed by Brazilian physician Claudio Gil Araujo, that asks people to sit and stand from the floor using as little support as possible. Each time you use a hand, knee, forearm, or side of your leg for support, you lose a point from a scale of 10. A score below 8 is associated with significantly higher mortality risk over the next 6 years. It's not that the movement itself keeps you alive. It's that the ability to do it reflects a combination of strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination that underlies almost every other physical task you might need to do in an emergency or unexpected situation. Most people over 60 in North America score 4 or below. Many can't do it at all without significant support. In rural Japan, people in their 70s routinely score 8 or higher. The difference isn't genetics, it's practice. They've never stopped getting up and down from the floor. They sit on floor cushions, they kneel to garden, they lower themselves to clean or organize low spaces. The movement is woven into daily life. For those of us who've spent decades in chairs, it's a skill we have to relearn. I met a woman named Carol, 68, a retired teacher who'd had both knees replaced. She couldn't imagine getting down to the floor, let alone getting back up without help. We started with a very high surface, almost chair height, and worked down over 3 months. Foam blocks, folded blankets, progressively lower platforms. She practiced the motion of shifting weight onto one leg, engaging her core, using momentum without rushing. It was slow. Some weeks she didn't progress at all. But 6 months in, she got down to a low cushion and back up, no hands. She cried. She said she hadn't been on the floor in a decade, hadn't played with her grandkids down at their level, hadn't felt that capable. Here's the protocol. Do not attempt to go straight to the floor. Start seated on a sturdy bench or step, about 18 inches high. Practice standing up by shifting your weight forward, pressing through one foot, and rising without using your hands. If you need to touch lightly for balance, fine, but don't push off. Once you can do that smoothly 5 times in a row, lower the surface by 2 inches. Repeat. It might take weeks or months to work down to floor level, and that's appropriate. This isn't a race. When you do reach the floor, use padding, a yoga mat or thick rug to protect your joints. Practice the descent first. That's usually harder and riskier, before you worry about the ascent. Here's the science behind it. This movement requires hip and ankle mobility, core stability, leg strength, and dynamic balance all at once. It's what researchers call a complex motor task. Training, it doesn't just make you better at getting off the floor. It improves your ability to recover from a stumble, to catch yourself mid-fall, to navigate stairs or curbs or any situation where your center of gravity shifts unexpectedly. It's one movement with 100 applications, and here's where it connects back to Tanran and the toe grip work. Those foundational practices make this one possible. Strong glutes give you the power to rise. Strong toes give you the grip and feedback to control your descent. It's a system. That's how Japanese elders think about movement. Not isolated exercises, but interlocking skills that reinforce each other. Now we come to number 1, the practice that consistently gets the most attention when Western researchers observe it, and the one that takes the least time but delivers the most immediate result. It's called Shinkokyu no Nobasu, which translates roughly to deep breath lengthening, but the movement itself is more specific than the name suggests. You stand in a doorway, feet staggered, one slightly forward. You place your forearms on either side of the door frame at roughly shoulder height, elbows bent, and you lean your body gently forward, letting your chest open and your shoulders pull back. You hold that stretch for 1 deep inhale, 4 counts in through the nose, then a longer exhale, 6 counts out through the mouth, and as you exhale, you let yourself lean a tiny bit deeper into the stretch. You repeat this for 3 breaths, total time about 60 seconds, then step back and reset. Why does this matter more than any other item on this list? Because it directly counteracts the single most universal postural collapse that happens after 60. Your chest caves in, your shoulders round forward, your head drifts ahead of your spine. It's called kyphosis when it's severe, but even mild versions of it compress your lungs, restrict your breathing, shift your center of gravity forward, and make every other movement harder and less stable. You can strengthen your legs, sharpen your balance, train your core, but if your posture is collapsed forward, you're fighting against your own structure with every step. This doorway stretch, done daily, often first thing in the morning, reverses that pattern. It opens the front of your chest, the pectoral muscles that get tight from decades of sitting, driving, and leaning over desks or devices. It activates the muscles between your shoulder blades that hold you upright. And the breath work, the deliberate slow exhale, signals your nervous system to relax, which allows the stretch to go deeper without triggering a protective clench. Within 1 session, you'll feel taller. Within a week, you'll notice it's easier to take a full breath. Within 2 weeks, people around you will comment, that you look different, more open, more confident, even though they won't be able to say exactly what changed. Research from respiratory and musculoskeletal clinics has shown that even small improvements in thoracic posture, the position of your upper back and chest, can increase lung capacity by 10 to 15% in older adults. That means more oxygen with every breath, better endurance, less fatigue. It also shifts your center of mass back over your hips, which improves balance and reduces the load on your lower back and knees. One movement, 60 seconds, and it touches almost everything. I worked with a man named Paul, 71, who'd been a carpenter for 40 years. His posture was so rounded forward that he couldn't look up without tilting his whole body back. He had chronic neck pain, shallow breathing, and his balance was shaky because his head was always out in front of his feet. I gave him the doorway stretch and told him to do it every morning before a coffee. He was skeptical, said 60 seconds couldn't fix 40 years. But he tried it. 1 week and his neck pain eased. 2 weeks in, he realized he was breathing better, didn't get winded as fast on walks. A month in, his wife told him he looked younger. He still does it every day, says it's the one thing he won't skip. Here's the exact protocol. Find a standard doorway, stand with feet staggered, toes pointing forward, about a foot back from the threshold. Place your forearms on the frame, elbows at 90 degrees or slightly wider, somewhere between shoulder and head height, whichever feels most open across your chest. Lean forward gently from your hips, not your low back, until you feel a moderate stretch across the front of your chest and shoulders. It should not hurt. Inhale deeply through your nose for 4 counts, feeling your ribs expand. Exhale slowly through your mouth for 6 counts, letting your body settle a bit deeper into the stretch as the air leaves. Repeat for 3 full breaths. Step back, roll your shoulders, notice how you feel. Do this every morning. If you miss a day, just start again the next. Consistency is everything. One caution: if you have a shoulder injury or frozen shoulder, adjust the arm position lower or use a corner instead of a doorway so you can control the angle more precisely. The goal is opening your chest, not straining your shoulders. If you feel pinching or sharp pain, back off. This is a gentle, persistent stretch, not a force. Here's what ties all 5 of these together. They're not about strength for strength's sake or flexibility for vanity. They're about maintaining the movement vocabulary that lets you live independently, confidently, without fear. Falls, fractures, loss of mobility, these aren't inevitable parts of aging. They're the result of losing skills we assume will always be there until suddenly they're not. Japanese elders know this. They treat movement like a language. If you don't use it, you lose it. But if you practice it daily, even in small doses, it stays. The beauty of these 5 practices is that they fit into the cracks of your day. Tanrin while your tea steeps. Toe grips while you watch the news. One hand balance while you brush your teeth. The sitting-rising progression once or twice a week. The doorway stretch before you do anything else in the morning. Together they take less than 10 minutes. But the return, steadier gait, better posture, stronger balance, more confidence, shapes everything else you do. If you're watching this and thinking it's too late, that you've already lost too much ground, let me challenge that. Your nervous system is plastic, adaptable at every age. These movements work because they give your body clear, specific signals about what you're asking it to do, and your body responds. It might take longer than it would have at 40, but it still happens. I've seen people in their mid-80s regain movement capacity they thought was gone forever. The only requirement is that you start and that you stay consistent. One last thing. You don't have to do all 5 right away. Pick one. The doorway stretch is the easiest entry point. It asks the least and gives an immediate felt sense of change. Do that daily for 2 weeks. Let it become automatic, then add the toe grips. A month later, fold in the balance work. These aren't a program you complete. They're a practice you keep. Which one of these 5 movements are you going to try first, and what's the main reason you're drawn to it? Drop your answer below. I'd love to know where you're starting and what you're hoping it changes for you.